The sun is shining bright in the city of Bengaluru, and that can only mean a good thing here for the people sitting inside the Vidhana Saudha, because they've come out with a Karnataka solar power policy where the target for solar power generation has been set at 1,000 megawatts in the next 15 months. But of course there are challenges like land acquisition or the rather contentious anti-dumping duties. I'm Vikram Oza, and I'm here to talk to the industry on what it's going to take for Karnataka to be the next renewable energy hub in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the CEO Conclave here at the Green Summit 2014. It's an important period of time that we are in because obviously the word developing has been attached to our nation far too long. As part of the development story, energy becomes very central. And for every state to participate in this entire development process becomes so vital. In terms of energy resources, I'm given to understand that Karnataka, for one, constitutes 6% of the total installed electricity generation capacity in the country. But a majority of this obviously is coming from fossil fuels. Yes, it's coming from coal and natural gas. Now, these are depleting resources. So if the question is, how can our country reduce dependence on fossil fuels, then the answer obviously lies in renewable energy, which is what we're here to discuss. The industry is here. We're looking at the challenges. We're looking at how Karnataka can really lay the roadmap to up the ante when it comes to renewable energy and become a significant contributor to what India needs at this point in time. But then how much more are we doing to be able to take it up a few notches? I know that the solar policy has been out. Karnataka has come out with it not too long ago. There is promise, but there is a lot more ground to be covered as well. But it takes me back to the time when you talk about Karnataka as an IT destination, as a state that has been able to make a success of a certain sector. So where I'd like to start is by asking you, sir, first, what are the lessons that we've learned from the development of an IT sector, from the growth that we've seen over there, and be able to replicate some of that in this sector, which is holding so much promise?
See, IT sector, I'm sure there are many people in the audience who know much more about IT than I do. That developed here because of the basic resource that was critical for the development of IT being available readily here, namely human resources of a certain quality, people with very good technical education, and a lot of infrastructure already with electronics industries like Bharat Electronics Limited being available here, and Indian Space Research Organization, one of the biggest users of information technology being available here. And they were actually sourcing information technology from outside the country as well for their own work. And the Indian Institute of Science being available here. So lots of these things like the right kind of infrastructure, the right kind of human resource, which are two very critical elements for the development of information technology, they were readily available here, and a benign policy regime was also conducive to this.
But let me take up that point, because infrastructure and human resource, now if those are the cornerstones like sir is pointing out, how much of that do we already have going for us in the renewable energy industry?
I think from an industry perspective, we have seen that the solar industry, in fact, started in Bangalore probably 25, 30 years ago. We have, in the last 25 years, the infrastructure, to a small extent, has developed in the RE sector, specifically with respect to solar. It hasn't caught speed because of varieties of reasons, which we could discuss. But I would say from an IT to renewable, the delta that is there, of course, human resources is available, infrastructure to a small extent is available, but I would say the major infrastructure is still missing. The major policies are still missing. The major, I would say, issues which needs to be addressed are still missing. And I think today in this
what you've already seen in the IT sector.
Yes, what we've seen in the IT sector.
To give it that kind of momentum. You agree?
Yeah, very much. I think I would just take off from where Mr. Murthy left off. the whole idea about the IT sector in Karnataka and when we look at the renewable energy growth as well, apart from all the key points that he mentioned about the talent pool available, about the inherent infrastructure resources that were available in Karnataka, the one big point that also encompassed all of that is the right kind of policies and sustainable policies, which were also measured with an efficiency of deliverables vis-a-vis delivery.
Correct.
So that's something which is given a good impetus, and something that people also tend to ignore is also the kind of idea of how the IT sector could grasp that there was a good amount of value capture that they could have.
Right.
With all this infrastructure at your disposal, you could really look at doing the same job that anybody could do in US, for example, at a far lower cost out here in India.
Sure.
So that's something which is very inherent and something that the renewable sector could also take into account when it's trying to differentiate from the global renewable sector in general.
Right. So policy and implementation, those remain like the cornerstones of most industries, but then is that what it's going to take to give a spurt to this industry?
So I think if you take Karnataka, I think it has one of the best wind potentials. If you take today, the most untapped wind potential is in Karnataka today. And the issue is, it's not the policy, it's not that the feed-in tariff is there, but it's the allocation of capacity of certain locations, right? And that has been taken over by a few people, and that has somewhat inhibited the development of the wind. Right, same thing with solar. You have 2 or 3 policies with 150 megawatt, but I think the screening of the people for the selection process and the kind of checks and penalties that Jawaharlal Nehru Solar Mission had was not there in the Karnataka solar policy, allowing non-serious players to bid and not implement. So this very small fraction of the policy initiatives have been implemented because the screening process and the selection has not been good.
I just want to take a step back because the idea is that we want renewable energy to grow in this state. Yes. What are we going to do to be able to get more investments into the sector right now? What is it going to take?
So like Arul said, so if you look at certain perspective, one is on the wind side, they have a predefined tariff which is defined by KERC, and then you get grid-based incentive from MNRE. So combine this. There are installations that happen on the wind sector. But if you look at the solar sector, other than probably about 40-50 megawatts that's been installed in the last couple of years, the great challenges that we face is, in addition to what we talked about, is also land. Interestingly, in this policy, what the government has said that if you have land which you have bought as a developer, then you could probably get it converted to a non-agriculture purposes, and you did not wait. Earlier what used to happen is you had to wait to convert it to a non-agriculture or industrial purposes, then only you could build plants. But what the government is saying is you need not wait, or the policy says you need not wait till that happens. You can start building the plant the moment you acquire the land.
Right.
But interestingly, what's happening is that till the policy came, all the developers and IPPs were hovering around and saying, how should we acquire land in Karnataka? And there was also this restriction of that you can't buy beyond 50 acres of land. And interestingly, you had to have an aggregation of 3 or 5 acres of land, go to 10 landowners and build plants. So this is to take a lot of time. Just to give you an idea, the gestation that you have in solar plants are probably about so if you want to build a 10 megawatt plant, you can build it in about 3 or 4 months. But the time that's required to acquire land sometimes runs from 6 months to 12 months.
Correct.
So I believe that the solution lies in trying to see, can we create an SEZ? Can we create a park? Can we create a 500 or 1,000 megawatt park? And by virtue of that, you're showing a commitment to the outside investment world, in addition to the policies that Mr. Murthy was speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. For solar power, acquisition of land, I was talking about critical points to be able to kind of see this through. How much of that is getting addressed through the policy right now? Because something like what you're talking about, agricultural land, Now, they're saying that a minimum capacity of 1 to 3 megawatts. This is going to be for the farming community to be able to acquire land. Are measures like this going to help the purpose
Yes.
in the acquisition of land is my question.
Yeah, so Vikram, one point we need to be very clear here. We are talking about farmland. Yeah, renewable energy is something which is, everyone wanted to take it, and because it's green. Now, it should not be perceived because agricultural land is being converted for solar energy or any other renewable energy, purposes. It should not be against the green revolution, which is actually the agricultural revolution. So we have to be.
So you don't want to take away from food security.
That point is well taken. I think there has to be greater clarity on the question of land for renewables. Particularly for wind, the footprint of wind energy generators is very small. It is not always at the cost of agriculture that you set up wind farms. It is possible to have side-by-side agriculture going on, though there may be a small marginal decline in the total area. When it comes to solar photovoltaic or even solar concentrated, then of course it's quite land intensive because 4 to 5 acres of land is required for each megawatt of electricity. But there is an urgent need, and government's policy, 2009 policy and 2014 policy, both say they are going to relax this rule relating to non-agricultural persons purchasing agricultural land. We have from the Commission advised the government that this is an issue that they must address urgently. They have even clearly expressed what is their intention. There is a rule which under the Land Reforms Act which allows them to do it by a mere notification. So they have said that they would like to do that. Probably the industry must have more intensive dialogue with them to see that this comes through. This is a promise which is already made in the policy of 2009 and also in 2014, and this should happen immediately.
Coming to a very moot question upon anti-dumping. Now, this has been a contentious issue, yes? Yeah. When you talk about anti-dumping, we have two sides of the divide very clearly marked out. Where do we stand on this? Let's talk about the state of Karnataka.
Anti-dumping duty is an all-India phenomenon. So Ministry of Commerce has recommended this about 2 weeks ago.
And Karnataka has opposed it.
No, Karnataka has, so everybody is impacted by it.
Correct.
So it's nothing to do with Karnataka. So if you import anything from some of the countries, you have an anti-dumping component which increases your capex cost of the project. So that's the current scenario. And of course, it is 90 days by which Ministry of Finance then converts it into a law. But the industry is hoping that it doesn't get converted into law because otherwise it really kills the industry. The current situation is that we build projects in the vicinity of about 7 to 8 crores per megawatt. And the anti-dumping duty that is imposed is anywhere between 70 lakhs to 3 or 4 crores per megawatt. So which means by virtue of this, you eventually increase the capex cost from 7-8 crores to almost, depending on from where you buy, to 9 crores to 10 or 11 crores. And then it makes all the calculation go haywire because your cost of tariff probably would go up by, so currently if the industry is able to sell at about 7 to 8 rupees per unit for next 25 years, it probably will go up by 1.5 rupees. And if the country is determining now to build 7,500 megawatts in the next 4 years, and that's the GNSM plan, because we built 2,500 megawatts in the last 4 years, so that 7,500 megawatts, if there is an increase of 1 rupee because of anti-dumping duty, will impact the country by 20,000 crores. So we from the industry would still say, we got to make manufacturing sustainable, we got to make manufacturing of solar modules important in the country, but not at the cost of spending government's exchequer by 20,000 crores.
This obviously has to be tossed to you.
Right. Actually, the Tata Group believes in free and fair trade practices. We are not for protectionism. We are not seeking any barriers to entry in any country, right? At the same time, we seek a level playing field in terms of manufacturing, right? So the level playing field is not, we are not saying what the level playing field is. The Ministry of Commerce has done a 2-year investigation. It's not a 1-year investigation. It's a 2-year investigation, which is very detailed, and it's probably one of the best reports that the ministry has produced in India, as well as anywhere globally, and it's probably going to be seen as a reference report, right? And they have determined that there is a significant amount of dumping, and that is necessary to protect the Indian manufacturing industry from anti-dumping, from dumping, right? So to what Rajesh's point, there is a short-term impact because there are certain PPAs that have been signed which did not account for the anti-dumping, and they will be impacted, right? But what I see differently is I believe in the Indian people, Indian engineers, right? And given a level playing field, the Indian engineers will be able to do as well as Chinese engineers or engineers in Malaysia, right? So it's only a short-term impact. There will not be a 1 rupee impact in tariff for 20 years or 3 years for all the 7,500 megawatt. Maybe 6 months or a year, there will be an impact until there is sufficient manufacturing capacity that is built in the country. That will
Then
be,
you're willing to take on the competition.
that will be competitive. And I'm not saying that, look, the irony is, at that point, Tata Power Solar may not be the lead manufacturer in the country. Because the moment the market is big, there is a need to produce locally. There will be significant foreign direct investment in the country who will set up manufacturing. India is as good a manufacturing location as Malaysia. It has better labor rates than China. So there is no reason for India not to have that manufacturing capacity.
Vishwanath, where do you stand on the debate?
Now, if you look at, there are certain reports which are backed by analysis by some of the state's largest lenders, state-backed lenders, including some of the private lenders who have also got banking license very recently. So I would like to quote some of those reports. The whole idea is with these reports, it's very clearly emerging that the analysis of the value chain has shown that India can be competitive after wafers. So there is a certain segment, you start with ingots, you have polysilicon, ingots, wafer, cell, and then you go to modules.
Right.
Now these reports have very clearly identified after studying the value chain across countries that India has a comparative advantage once you come to the wafer stage. But prior to that, there is a huge stage of actually manufacturing polysilicon. When you look at polysilicon, you need to go through a reducing sort of a process where coke is one of the major requirements. Now if you look, this is a bit of an irony. If you look at India right now, India is one of the larger importers of coke for the steel industry. So there you have an issue. The second issue that you have is it requires a lot of conventional energy to produce, and that inherently is coming back to the subject of power.
So to be able to kind of consolidate our thoughts, if I can turn to the panel before I throw it open to the audience as well, I just want to know what your one crucial idea would be to take Karnataka's renewable energy prowess to the next level.
See, in my point of view, there is a new policy now which has been released. Very good, 1 to 3 megawatt. You have a rooftop net metering, 400 megawatt. Policies looks very good. I would say that it's an excellent tariff in my point of view. We need to sustain this policy. Number one, should have enough measures for right implementation. And if this happens, this is the right place to take off for Karnataka. And we can look forward to this.
Define clear goals, objectives for the next 5 years by turning this policy into an implementable policy.
That's right. So the figure points here.
No? Yes.
No, the policy.
No, in the sense of how to make it implementable, now that remains the key.
See, the implementation, the intentions of implementing this policy are very clearly articulated in the policy, as I have seen. I have not met the policy, it's the government. They have spelled out how many megawatts of solar power they would like to see installed every year over the next 7 years. And what kind of support government intends to give is also indicated in that policy. Now, two hands have to come together. Now, it is the industry's job now to sit with the government and make them translate the intention into actual specific policy incentives and then see that the whole development is taken forward. Now, I am not, you see, industry should not, in my opinion, pardon my saying so, should not wait for government to prepare everything and serve it on a platter.
Right.
Government have the intention, you please go forward, have a dialogue with them, or put some degree of,
The onus is on the industry. What will the industry do to take it to the next level?
The industry, I guess, is committed to do its best in terms of getting these plans rolled out and trying to assist the government as much as possible. The whole idea there is also for, and this is a request from the industry to the government as well, to ensure that at least in the first few phases, they look at implementation, in the right earnest. So you should probably penalize people who have not done the projects on time by way of bank guarantees or stuff, which I think is anyways a part of the process in other states, but maybe make it a little more rigid so that you understand that only the most serious guys are supposed to come and do stuff out here.
Right.
So that will also drive in, and you don't need to do that over phases, you just need to do it in one phase to show that you are serious about what you're trying to do.
Right.
Otherwise it would,
So you're thinking that is going to be enough?
Yes, that should be, I would say for starters, should be enough.
Right.
Actually, I agree with Vish on the thing. If they implement the same criteria as the JNSM in terms of the allocation of the bids, I think the projects will happen because the PPAs are bankable, the utilities are bankable. You have that same bankability that comes with the NVV and with BESCOM, right? I think so with the screening mechanisms and the penalties associated with non-execution of an allocated portfolio, if they can be just copied, they don't have to reinvent anything. I think that would make a big difference. On the industry front, I think I agree with the chairman that we need to do more on reaching out to the green conscious customers. We need to do more on the distributed small systems, right? We need to do more on solar pump propagation, I think. That's something we have to create.
So that's the
awareness.
opportunity
Yeah.
that needs to be tapped into. Implementation is the key. If we have what is put down on paper actually happen on the ground, that is good enough to start with at the moment. Right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure being in Bangalore and with you. We hope the discussion continues. Thank you, gentlemen. Everyone on the panel, thank you indeed.
Karnataka is facing power problems. On the long-term basis, there are so many avenues to bring and produce energy. In this connection, we want to focus on renewable energy this year because Karnataka also come out with a policy where they want to encourage renewable energy. That's why FKC also, because we are representing trade and industry body, we don't want to face the power problem. That's how FKC want to do this summit regularly. One is attracting the investors in Karnataka. One is to solve the power problem in Karnataka. The other things, our industrialists, investors should not face a power problem in future.
Karnataka has a history. First electricity is from Karnataka. First hydropower plant is from Karnataka. And first solar mega power plant is from Karnataka. If you look at that whole history, Karnataka has a big history. And some time back, during 90s, Karnataka has been called Solar City of India because of solar water heaters. So keeping that in that mind, I think now if you start working on that Karnataka to make a real hub for the RE, definitely the Karnataka will become a hub in the country.
Today, the onus lies with everyone. It is no more with CEOs, it is no more with boardroom. In fact, it is the other way. The demand is there, the need is there, and everyone is coming forward to contribute. Investors are also looking at it as a big opportunity. Industrialists, technocrats, researchers are coming together. Governments are also very serious about the subject. So I think that, we are heading towards good days for renewable energy.